Greetings, fair listeners. Welcome to the 10 Laws podcast with East Forest. I am Forrest East, your host today for this podcast, and today I bring you a conversation with Laura Bird of the Mynabirds. Formerly known as Laura, well, we'll get into name changes and what that means and what it can do for your consciousness and yourself and your friends. But I really enjoyed talking to her. Laura is featured on the track Soul Land, which just came out in Chapter 3, so she's part of the Ram Dass record, and she's been helping us along the way just with midwifing this project, so I think you're going to enjoy this conversation. I just got back from the Neem Karoli Baba Ashram in Taos, New Mexico. I was out here in southern Utah with Radha, and so we drove down. It was about, 10, 11-hour drive. And we stopped along the way to see Chaco Canyon. I don't know if you've been to Chaco Canyon, but it's way up in the northwest corner of New Mexico. It's not exactly a place that, you typically are in that neighborhood, shall we say. So it seemed like, well, look, we're passing by, so let's make this a 2-day trip and we'll stop at Chaco, which is a pretty cool place because it's like has, one of the largest, has a 600-room pueblo, and there's just hundreds of other pueblos around. And apparently this was seems like sort of a cultural center of life in North and South America about 1,000 or so years ago, which is incredible to think, right? Like right now, to us, it's in the middle of nowhere, but back then that was sort of like the hub, the depot. They had seashells from thousands of miles away and all sorts of turquoise and rocks and riches and incredible structures. So it's pretty neat to see some ancient civilization stuff out there, which is just really in the middle of nowhere. You're driving down like a road, and then the road turns into gravel, and then it turns into washboard, and then it turns into like worse and worse roads. I luckily had 4-wheel drive, and then as soon as you hit Chaco Canyon National Historic Park, like federal property, the road magically becomes paved. In the New Mexico part, it's terrible. But anyway, we're on our way to the Neem Karoli Baba Ashram, Maharaji's ashram that Ram Dass founded. I hope I'm not getting this wrong. 40-some years ago, and he brought over a Hanuman statue, or oh God, what do they call my brain's, it's the morning here. They don't call it a statue. There's a special name for it. But he brought over this Hanuman, and they made a little temple on some land in Taos. And then over the years, they've been planning on making an official, sort of larger, special temple for this Hanuman's statue. And it's taken 40 years. And so they finally finished it. Hanuman Das out there has been the one leading the way on this, and this was the grand opening. And even more amazingly, Ram Dass came. This is the first time Ram Dass has been off the island of Maui in 15 to 20 years, pretty much since he had his stroke out there and got sick and said, I'm staying in Maui. This is it. I'm a Maui boy. I'm an island guy. I'm going to die here. And when we were out at the retreat in the spring, I had heard about, that's actually how this all came to be. We were out at the retreat, and I was sitting at dinner with Ira and Hanuman Das, and Ira said, East Forest should come out and play the opening of this and play these new Ram Dass songs to sort of honor this moment. And in a nutshell, that was it. It unfolded from there. And I heard Ram Dass also, I think at one of the brunches, said to his team, his friends, I am going. And he kept hitting his hand on the table. I am going. I am going. And everyone's like, okay, how are we going to do this? So I think they had to get a plane for him and 4 handlers and a doctor, and they made it happen. And unbelievably, it was so amazing to see Ram Dass off the island and in this temple 40 years later. He was so ecstatic. He was just beaming with love and energy. He was so excited to be there. And it was such an amazing thing to witness. And they made it happen. As I'm recording this, I think he's still there. He's going to be there about 6 days or so. And what was really special for me is that this is the Neem Karoli Baba ashram. This is Maharaji's ashram that they founded here in the States. And as I've sort of spoken about, this entire Ram Dass record for me has been in relationship and guided by Maharaji. And, if you're someone who doesn't know perhaps who Maharaji is, that might sound kind of weird. And I'm assuming if you do know who Maharaji is, you're like, yeah, by his grace. And, this is something I get into a lot at different points in the podcast. And it's something that's really been an edge for me because, growing up as I grew up in this sort of with a family where my father was a secular, rationalist, materialist, scientist, atheist. My mother is, I would say, a quasi-Christian, open to these things, but, nothing too strict. And my sister and I were just sort of left floating in the sort of the suburban upbringing in Oregon. And we both were totally welcomed and free to go explore, but not really given any spiritual or certainly any religious guidance. My grandmother would take us to like Sunday school a little bit when we were kids, or, on Christmas we'd go to a Presbyterian church and sing songs and that kind of stuff. But we were really adrift spiritually. And my sister has gone more the path of, she's deeply religious, Christian. I don't know all the details of her beliefs, but I do know that it's become a lot of her life and her identity, her community with church. And from my perspective, it seems to be very progressive and liberal church, sort of that angle or that edge of the Christianity. But she and I think, share a lot of the same values, I would believe, but maybe we're coming at it from different angles. And of course, I'm doing what I'm doing, which my whole life feels that spirituality, in quotes, is the main driving force, is the thing that kind of everything's framed around that. And that's sort of what is the fuel that I'm looking at, everything that I do. And if anything, if I had to say, if any goal in life, it's just that my entire life becomes inside the soup of the spiritualism of sorts, so that it all has this kind of meaning and groundedness, and I'm never asleep, and that everything becomes a meditation, and everything becomes me not forgetting who I am, where we are, even though I don't know where we are and who we are, but I know, and it's this wonderful, incredible mystery. That dance is something that I want to do with just more grace. So, Maharaji, going back to Maharaji, when I was a kid, I explored Christianity for a few years. I explored a little bit of everything. And I even did the whole I'll give myself to Jesus, and that's what they say we're supposed to do, so I'll do it. And something about it never felt right. I mean, just on the pedantic level of I give my power to this individual we're calling Jesus, who is a man, and I obviously don't know him. He was thousands of years ago, and I guess that's what they call faith, but something about it felt very pedantic and very sort of human in a way. And it wasn't until my experiences with psychedelics in college, when I was 18 or 19, my very first experience with psilocybin, where luckily I had a positive one, that showed me there's a lot more to existence and consciousness than just words on a page or an individual we're identifying as the second coming of God, or however you view it, God himself. And I have this direct relationship with a male God. I mean, it just blew me open to felt experience, and seeing all of these sort of religious texts and stories and ideas almost as metaphor or doorways into things that can't be described, things that can't be, they're beyond words. So we're sort of dancing around it in the same way that music and art is dancing around it. It's all dancing around the mystery. It's brushstrokes to describe the ineffable. So, I went into that, I went out of that, and never really found something of real salience or resonance with me. And so later here in life, 20-some years later, when I'd heard about the Maharaji, or Neem Karoli Baba, his name, as a man who, as it seems, was kind of like a Christ, or certainly could sort of knew everything. And the stories I would hear about him were fresh and new. I mean, I've now met so many people. One of my favorite things is to hear firsthand stories from people about the Maharaji, because that's so amazing. It's like I'm 1 degree away from a firsthand story of these various miracles, or what it was like for them to be in the presence of someone who essentially was holding the consciousness of a Buddha or a Christ or Hanuman. And these are just different ways of describing what this person was. And you know what I always like about the Buddha is that he was a man, and by his own discipline, by stories, as you read in like Siddhartha, for instance, 6 years under a Bodhi tree to explore his inner consciousness, his inner world, to sort of weed out all the illusion, to become the Buddha. He was a man. And I see Buddhism as like a way of life versus a religion. But anywho, it made it sort of like showing you the way, showing you a path you could take. And the Maharaji, I don't know who or what he is, but I've heard enough stories from people who were there that I'm pretty amazed. And it's something that I'm not giving my life over to him as much as I'm giving my life over to the river that he represents. He is illuminating to you what you are, in a sense, what we all are. And that's why I love all these metaphors, like we're all under his blanket, or, these are again, just poetry of describing the mystery. And, my relationship started when I was in a really rough time going through the divorce, and it was winter, and I had heard about, I think through the Ram Dass podcast, they had that new book, Love Everyone, which is like the second book that's stories about Maharaji. And I bought the book, and I was just I'd read it at night, because at night my thoughts would get pretty dark. And I noticed when I read it, I just felt better. So that's why I read it at night. And there was a story in there. I'm sorry if I've told this story before, but I'll tell it briefly. There's a story in there about a shop cart guy, like a food cart guy in India, who had a picture. A lot of people have pictures of Maharaji just on their cart, just because they think it's like just having a picture makes your business is better. You make more money. Things are just better. And so I thought, well, fuck it. I'll get a picture, and I printed out a picture and I stuck it up on my wall of the trailer I was in. And that started it all. Because I started looking at this, and I had my own thoughts about it. I felt like we were having a conversation through my thoughts. And the conversation was rich and playful and stern and loving. And then I eventually had my little Jesus moment with Maharaji. I'm like, look, I hear that maybe you can help. I need help. So, hey, I'm listening. I'm here to listen. I'm here to pay attention. And then you fast forward, and I was sitting with Ram Dass, and we're about to release this record, the Ram Dass record, on August 9th. And then the journey it's almost incomprehensible how this has all happened. And I would be a fool to say it was all me. And I know that Maharaji, or however you want to look at it, what Maharaji represents, his guidance, his grace, helped make all that happen. And, the more I'm in the flow of the river, the more there's less resistance on my part. And this great energy of this river, this magnanimous love, you can beat it too, because you're flowing with it. And I know this is how Ram Dass sees it. And that's why I love like the song You're a Guru. How he's talking about Maharaji, and at the same time saying, you're a guru. And I know that's kind of confusing, but that's also beautiful. So it felt really important to go to this temple opening as an act of service, and to play these songs there to honor Maharaji. And that's what we did. And it was really nice. I mean, it was a lot of work. There wasn't a lot of sound support. We had to set up everything. Thanks, Carl, for helping me move the stage around, and Andrew, and plugging everything in and finding circuits that wouldn't break. But it needed to be done. So thank you, Maharaji. Thank you, Neem Karoli Baba. I'm really excited more than excited, I'm really grateful that this record is coming out and that this is happening and happened and August 9th. If you want to host a listening party on August 9th, I think this would be a great one to do. It's going to be the entire record, 14 songs. It was always intended to be a connected listening experience. So if you do host a listening gathering, you can always reach out to us at info@eastforest.org, and we'll send you the lyrics and maybe some other materials like a video or a Ram Dass talk to kind of tie it all together. You can use that material or not and make an evening out of it. But that's on August 9th when this whole thing starts to really get cooking. I just wanted a little housekeeping. The East Forest Retreat is coming up this fall, September 26th through 29th in southern Utah, here in my homeland. We do have some, you can camp. We have some housing in the bunk rooms. All that stuff is ridiculously affordable. I highly encourage you to take the leap and say, all right, I'm going to share some space or I'm going to camp. We also have a little bit of off-campus housing available, which wasn't available before. So if you've been, housing is the thing that's been making you be like, I don't know, I encourage you to reach out, pull the trigger. It will fill up. We have a limited space because we like to keep this an intimate event, and it is a special one. So check it out. That's all at eastforest.org. Just hit the retreat tab, and that's all I'm going to say. All right. Happy summer. Enjoy this conversation with Laura Bird.
It's great to be in Soul Land. To identify with your individual soul in the plane of consciousness, which I call Soul Land.
This is like force majeure. What are you going to do,
Oh, okay. So are you good? Should we start over?
Wait, where are you? Are you in Omaha? Are you in DC?
I'm in Los Angeles, where the power is a problem.
I'm in the middle of nowhere. I'm the one who's the power should go out, not you. It's like just yesterday I had like internet was going in and out, and it was snowing, and it's like, and now you're in LA and get a power surge.
I know. I literally jumped up and I said, "What is going on?" And my housemate said, "Oh my gosh, all the power just went out. I think that knocked out the internet." Oh, geez.
Well, it may happen again if it happened once. We'll see. It's okay. I'm sorry. It's better than like things just dropping out for no reason.
I know. So, okay. Has it been recording this whole time?
Clearly that story was unimportant.
We're like...
I don't know. It looks like I might have got the first part. We'll find out. But if not, it's not like we'll kind of half start over. How's that? We were talking about names, and we were talking about the fact that you've switched to a new name, sort of, or you're in the process, and you were asking me how I got mine.
Yeah. And you were telling me, I mean, should we just start over? This is so funny to me.
Sure. We'll just start over.
Okay.
All right. We're starting over.
It's just like starting over with a new name.
Exactly. Anyway, so names, you're right. What you said about when you are given a new name or adopt a new name, it is an opportunity to step into a new identity of how you see yourself more than anything, more than how other people see you. It's about how you see yourself and how you want to embody what that means for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that I think naming someone is the most important thing that anyone really does. And as a parent, I mean, people can talk about parenting skills, but in some ways I feel like the name a parent gives their child is really the most important work they do.
There's that idea that certain names kind of have certain identities. I don't know if you've ever noticed that with kids.
Oh yeah.
We could go down the rabbit hole of like, I don't know. When I knew kids growing up who were named like Shadow or, well, that's kind of a weird name.
Did you know a Shadow? I knew a Stash. He was like, that's pretty close.
Stash. I knew a girl named
Nicodemus.
Araya, and her middle name was Sunshine,
Uh-huh.
which was kind of weird. But I'm more like kids named like Dustins and Derricks were usually kind of like tough kids.
Yeah, they were.
At least as kids. I don't know as adults, but Crystals were kind of salty girls sometimes. But I have a close friend named Crystal now. She's not, well, I guess she's salty, but she's a beautiful woman. Point is, names maybe have an alchemy to them, a kind of magic.
Yeah, they do. I think they do. And, as I was saying, someone like David Bowie was not always David Bowie. He was David Jones.
Right.
And I think that sometimes when we take on a new name, we're actually allowing ourselves to take on the mantle of our fully expanded and realized self. And that's, deconstructed and dissected away from the expectations your family might have for you, or what you think the expectations are of you based on, your family and society around you, and how your teachers have treated you, etc. And so I think that sometimes a name can be a thing that subconsciously holds us back. And so allowing to step into a new name allows us to step into a new phase of ourselves. Laura Bird is something that other people started calling me, and partially because of my band, the Mynabirds. So it was just like, Laura Bird.
Right.
And partially because Bird sounds like my given last name, which is Burhan. I have become acutely aware recently in considering even going by another name. What does this mean? And changing my name for a long time felt like a betrayal. It felt like betraying my entire family lineage. And why would I do this? And, I'm the only child, the last of the line of my dad's side. And I'm clearly not going to pass on the name Burhan, unless I, would decide to. So I don't know. I just felt all of this guilt and weight around it. And suddenly saying, "Oh, hi, I'm Laura Bird." It feels so free,
Well, is this something you're doing legally, or is this just sort of
no, I'm not
locally?
I'm not doing legally yet. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, more than anything, the bureaucracy of changing your name legally
is a pain in the ass. Yeah.
Just I think about women for years and years and years who were societally pressured to change their last names, and to think about, like, not only is there a beauty tax on women, and there's so many taxes on women that put them at an unfair advantage, but then also having to go through the bullshit of like the bureaucracy of changing your name on every single piece of paper and how much time that takes to do it.
Yeah, it clearly seems to be a vestige of passing on like wealth and family lines and stuff like that from a long time ago.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I definitely agree that there's a subconscious element to it for sure. Just because I notice when people call me Krishna, I have a very different reaction. And now that it's been almost a year, when I hear actually Trevor, it feels strange. And I have different circles that I have, right? So my Boise friends who are newer friends call me Krishna because to them that's what we know you as. My Boulder, Utah friends, where I've been now for a long time, they all know me as Trevor. And it's also like I haven't really gone through the machinations here of explaining it to them yet, because I actually haven't been here consistently a lot. And so I've just sort of let it slide, and it feels like a split identity in a way.
Right.
And so,
but do you think,
I'm not hardcore about it. It's more like it's up to the individual. I think if someone told me they'd changed their name, I'd be like, okay, whatever, I'll call you what you like. But I've actually had some pushback from a few friends, which I found very interesting.
You know what I think is interesting? I have a number of trans friends out here in LA, and all over the world, but particularly in LA. And when I've talked to people who have a hard time calling someone by their preferred pronoun as they're transitioning, I've said to them, look, this is the same thing as if someone has decided to change their name. It's the same thing. Someone says, no, I'm not Trevor, I'm Krishna. Or no, I'm not him, I'm her, And to me, it's the same thing. It's sort of like, this is an expression of who I really am. And ultimately, we can say to our friends, sure, that's fine. You can call me what you feel comfortable with. I have a dear friend who is a Kundalini guru, and she has a spiritual name, and she even requires her mother who gave her name, to call her by Guru Jagat. And, I'll slip up every once in a while because she's my best friend I've known from when we were 11,
Right.
But I do
friends
try.
of all people, it's like, it's not that big. It's, if you have any issue with it, it's your own baggage.
Right. Exactly.
It's one thing to slip up. It's another thing to be like, I don't know, I feel weird about it. You're like, why? It's not your thing. It's
right.
Like, this is your friend. This is what they want. This is what makes them feel good.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, so you're moving into sort of a new space, it sounds like, professionally, but also personally. And it's just kind of reflected in one and the other. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I would say that that's accurate. I think, the idea of shedding skin, right, to reveal the newer underbelly of like what's soft and tender and still growing, right? I think that that's really exciting about life and about spiritual journey and about treating your life as a body of work that can constantly change and evolve. And undergoing a name change can be a huge part of that. I think it's a serious rebirth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It'd be kind of interesting if we all did it at points in our lives, like at 30 and then maybe again at 60 at our various Saturn return points. It's like, you okay, now it's time. Your lease on your name is up. What's the new one going to be? You have to go on a journey with it.
I fully love that idea. I just got chills thinking about it because I think, I just turned 39 this year, and people get stuck in these modes of, oh, I'm this certain age. Now I am this person, or now I have to be this person, or everyone sees me in this way. And so that's, I guess, who I am. This is my life. But that idea of saying, oh, now I'm going to start something new. Now I am something new. Now I keeping evolving, is so exciting. And, you and I were talking recently about the idea of aging and wisdom and honoring age, and particularly in a society that culturally values youth, right? Youth and young beauty. I'm not going to say, I think aging beauty is gorgeous, but, from a pop culture standpoint, that's the world we live in. And so to sort of say, no, I reject that. I'm going to fully throw myself into this next phase of my life. And maybe it's with a new name and it's with a new identity. And maybe I'm going to be trying something new. That to me is like the most punk rock thing you could ever do in life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I think it's really just our own fear of death and a lack of identity with transformation and being very wrapped up in our sense of separateness in our mind. So that's probably why we worship beauty so much and push away aging so much, just because we're uncomfortable with the reality of this existential existence.
Right.
Walking around on the planet. There's actually a song coming out in chapter 3 with the song that you're on too, that's about death. That's called Like Taking Off an Old Shoe, aka Death. And I always like that line of Ram Dass's. And I liked injecting into the conversation that the record puts forth about death, not just about after death, like the idea of the soul and sort of reincarnation and things like this, but the actual process of death.
Right. Yeah, it's something that we spend our whole lives trying to deny. But the second we're born, we're dying, right? We're dying every second. And I like to say that in conversations and laugh about it, and and it doesn't always go well in a social setting. Someone says oh, I don't want to die. And I'm like, oh, what are you talking about? We're all dying. We're dying all the time.
Yo, bro, so heavy.
But, I mean, it's true. It's just these two forces at work at the same time in different measure. Or it's just one force, the life force that transforms,
Yeah. Yeah. And do you, like your last record, was the last one the one titled Be Here Now?
Yes.
So are these themes, do these themes come up for you musically, or is it sort of mixed in with other things as well? I mean, I know for myself, whether indirectly or directly, I feel like I'm always swimming in matters of the spirit in my music, just because that's where, I don't know, where I am a lot of the times. But I know it sounds like it's a big part of your walking meditation of life, spirituality. But how much does that manifest into your work and your music?
It manifests in all of it. I grew up in an extremely religious Christian, born again family, and so I started singing in the church and singing hymns and praise songs and stuff like that. And then moved away from that when I was about 13. But because of that, I think that my songwriting has always had it's always been part of my spiritual seeking. And, started studying more Zen Buddhism, mindfulness meditation. And my very first Mynabirds record is called What We Lose in the Fire, We Gain in the Flood. And that whole record is about loss and grief and recovery. And it's really, so that song was really that whole record was really sort of about the grieving process. And it really was about death and rebirth. Same thing. The next record I wrote was a political record called Generals, but even still, there's this spiritual bent to it. There's a song on it called Body of Work, which I kind of mentioned earlier, this idea of like continuing to invent ourselves throughout life. And that can be a nation, right? Or that can be an individual person. And in that, there is that death, rebirth, that continual cycle that happens again and again. And then Be Here Now was, in fact, a sort of political record in the sense that right after the last presidential election, I holed up in a studio with my producer and co-writing friend, Patrick Dampier, and we just read the headlines and every day and kind of wrote a song about what was happening. And so ultimately what I wanted that record to be was really an act of mindfulness meditation. It was about being present no matter what was happening. And I feel like there was this collective consciousness that was like pinging one way and one direction and then polar opposite the next way. Everybody was just so upset and there was so much happening so quickly. And I wanted to make this record of kind of the spiritual state of the collective consciousness of America specifically. And it was a good record to make, but funnily enough, I'm not sure that people wanted to hear it. People really wanted to feel, right? They wanted to feel angry. They wanted to feel, I don't know. It was just, it's an interesting time in life. And I think, especially when we're talking about pop culture, and I'm sure you come into contact with this in your music, which is you're tuning into the people who want to find a center, right? They want to find ground. They want to find ways of expanding spiritually. And, whether through meditation, whether through listening to music or doing yoga or, taking mushrooms or other psychedelics to expand consciousness. So, I think that when I was focused on sort of what was happening at large, it was this sort of constant, just noise and energy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's lots of different angles in too. I mean, and there is a lot of noise and energy going on. There's so many things going on. And I think we each have our doorway into that. Maybe mine is a little bit, I mean, I'm like anybody else. I have lots of feelings about all sorts of things. I just, it's just for some reason, musically, it keeps kind of having a similar vein of
right.
It's just definitely what I am needing personally, like sort of the medicine that I'm looking for myself. And
so do you treat your music in that way?
Like, do I intentionally treat it as a method of tapping into spirituality?
Yeah, spirituality, or like you were talking about kind of medicine. Do you think of it as do you go into writing a song and saying, I'm making this for to soothe myself?
Um, I think it's less like that, but it usually ends up coming out that way. I heard Tycho say once, like, he'll start a process with some new synthesizers, and by the time he's done, it sounds like every other synth he's ever. It always has this kind of dusty, dark quality, and it's part is because that's what he likes. But he might walk into it with a different mindset, and it continually gels into this one space. I mean, look, musically, I suppose I do bounce around. It can go from, beats to no beats to acoustic to electronic to vocals to strings to instrumental to lyrics. So it's less about that, but I am sort of chasing a feeling with it. Right. And that feeling has something to do with feeling infinite or tapping into that soul space. I sometimes feel that when you get into some of these spaces, at least personally, that it's like the only game in town is wanting to be back with God in a sense, or back with source, or to alleviate suffering on small levels and large levels. And that just happens to be a way for me to do it. And I might not identify all the time with meditation practice, or maybe sometimes I get that through hiking and walking, but there's some kind of consistency for me with creativity through music. That even if it's not fun at the moment, it feels like a chore. It sure helps my mental health and my sense of well-being.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I started writing songs when I was about 13, and I would say for sure music and songwriting saved my life. It really helped me through those depressive teenage years. And, I'm fascinated by the fact that music is scientifically proven again and again and again to be this this language that taps us directly into our connection with what is eternal and God and one another. And it's this transcendent language. And it affects our brain waves. It affects our heart rate. It affects, it's so incredible to me that it really moves matter, right? You think about sound waves hitting things and sound waves merging with our brain waves, right? And helping us we talk about being on the same wavelength as other people, but music has the power to do that. I find that fascinating and such an honor to be able to make music and to be able to work with this energy that has that power.
Yeah, I mean, we're swimming in music and sound these days all around the world more than ever. And I really feel like we don't fully give credence to how much power it does have to, it sort of just cuts right to the emotional content of things. And it does that in a really universal way. I mean, then there's the whole aspect of the math of it and the ratios and harmony and the frequencies. And there's something really beautiful about that. Like it's sort of a universal constant, like a fifth is a fifth is a fifth kind of thing all around the universe.
Yeah.
No matter how you might hear that because of your physiology, if you're some alien, but it's still like that relationship is a mathematical constant and there's a balance to it. And so music is like a relationship between various balances. And we hear that as harmony or dissonance, but nonetheless, it's all these different complex combinations of frequency balance. I don't need to get too wonky about it, but it's just really fascinating that even right now we're using sound and essentially music and melody and tone to communicate. We do it all the time, all day long. And it's just the fact that sometimes you sustain those notes. We call it singing. It's kind of the same thing,
Right.
We're all singing to one another. We're singing one another awake in a way all the time or asleep. And it's like asking a fish what water is.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your process, if you remember it at all, when you were working on coming up with some words and lyrics. I guess more for the perfect song, because I know for Soul Land it was a bit of a collaboration between the two of us, and you were gracious enough to try my ideas.
Oh, your ideas were great. It's so funny. You and I had just met, and you said, "Hey, do you want to do this project?" And by the way, you're going to basically be singing with Ram Dass. And my just that can be overwhelming. It's exciting, but also there's such excitement about the opportunity and what that could be, but also like a fear that you're just going to ruin it.
Yeah, I know that fear. I've been doing this one for a year, and I'm just like, I actually had someone when I first went to Maui to record him, and it was like at a kirtan. It was sort of social afterwards, and someone came up to me and straight up said, "Hey, don't fuck this up." And I didn't know them, and I was just like, "Oh well, I'm obviously not trying to, but Jesus Christ, people, it's like, give me a chance to just feel confident here." And like, multiple people were like, "Oh yeah, this is a rare thing. This better be good. You better do well."
I'll be honest with you. When you sent the first song, I was really struggling personally, and kind of in this weird spot with music, and feeling like, I put this last record out in 2017, and then I'd been started to do, like, basically just kind of walked away from music for a little bit. I thought the industry is overwhelming to me. I'd gotten involved talking about music being everywhere, had been doing a little bit of commercial work, writing and singing for commercials. And just that can be soul crushing.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of, like, especially in the music and the creative, pop creative world, it's not a lot of like, hey, what could we make that could be expansive for individuals and society? It's more like, what do the people want? Give them more of what they want. The algorithm says they want this, give them more of this. And
it's the worst.
Yeah,
it's all just pandering. I mean, that's the one metric I always work to stay away from every day.
Absolutely. It's not healthy. It would be like asking a bunch of kids, like, oh, the kids want candy. Give them more candy. That's what they want.
It's not good art either. It's like,
no.
I like hearing stuff that is innovative and sounds like the person was really just exploring what worked for them.
Right.
And I might jive with that, and other people might not. And that's okay. That's why we have all the different flavors of creativity out there.
Exactly. So when you handed me Soul Land, which is the first song we collaborated on, I actually tried singing those lyrics. I tried recording them a handful of times, and I had to stop, and I said, I'm not in the right headspace. And I felt directed specifically by Ram Dass in working on this project, where it wasn't, and I felt this, and it was interesting because you said, Ram Dass told me not to think like Trevor, that I needed to think like Krishna. And that really struck a chord with me. And so when I would sit down in the studio and start recording and saying, oh, this needs to be good, this needs to be a certain thing. And I heard Ram Dass's voice saying that to you and kind of saying the same thing to me, which is like, hey, you just need to be in the right place. You need to be a conduit to allow the correct frequencies to come forth, right? And so I actually spent a lot of time doing some walking meditation before I sat down to sing. And it was a process of a number of days, and doing some journaling and meditating and saying, okay, I got to get myself into this right place where I am open, right? So that was my experience with Soul Land.
But that was when, were you trying to sing like the little, because I sent you sort of just like a hook idea, basically.
Yeah.
A rough, and you're saying you were trying to sing that, or is this before that?
It was before that. And then you were working to come up lyrics, you were just starting from a blank slate. Yeah. But, I would listen to the track, and I would hear Ram Dass talking, and I was like, oh, I can't do this, this is too big. Don't fuck it up, But then when you did hand me some lyrics and said, will you try these? I tried them, and I thought, this isn't right. And I had to go away from it for a few days. And it took me a little bit of time, which was that's not normally part of the process when you're collaborating with someone musically, right? It's like, no, get the right notes down and make sure the timbre sounds right. Make sure. But this was like, no, get your heart right.
Interesting. Yeah, I've thought about that too sometimes. Like when I get into the process, if it's a little off for me, sometimes I have to just stop and be like, yo, man, like, don't be bringing in, bring a little gratitude back in, or a little humbleness, or bring some joy back in, because remember what this is,
Hmm.
whether I'm frustrated by some technical thing or whatever, some PR thing or something like that. And it's been really interesting to pause and step back sometimes and just remind myself that's like, this is being led. I don't have to manhandle every single bit of this. The more I can kind of step outside of it with grace and do my part, it's going to do exactly what it needs to do. It's being walked along by the grace of Maharaji, the universe, Ram Dass, all of us. Like it has a purpose, and I'm playing my role in it.
Right.
And I'm sure maybe you felt that too. I mean, what you came up with, I mean, I love the timbre of it. That's actually what I like the most about it, is sort of the vibe of how you sang it, because you took my shitty little demo-y thing and just made it sound like way more pro and better. And I was like, perfect.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I had a lot of, I mean, it was transformative. I feel like I'm getting emotional talking about it now, but it was very transformative, um, singing both of those songs, because I had to get, I think in order to let the song be led, I had to get myself into a meditative state where all I was thinking about was the heart of the lesson that Ram Dass was teaching for that song. And so the idea of soul land and our soul pod and being held, especially when I'm personally had been struggling with the idea of who am I as a musician? What am I doing in life? Am I doing anything that matters? And suddenly to feel held and to know that the universe has held me, and somehow I've been um, pulled into this soul pod that includes you. It includes Ram Dass. And it really put me into this place of like intense gratitude.
Yeah. Well, it's a great place to be coming from. That's what's so cool, I think, about a lot of the songs on this record, is that the process and maybe even the feeling they're engendering is also the subject matter of the song itself.
Right.
So it's beyond just like a singular self-contained song with an idea. Like I Am Loving Awareness is actually, he's talking about loving awareness, but then the song itself is a musical tool or a meditation leading you into that feeling and
Right.
showing you how to do it.
Right.
And the Soul Land one is kind of, there's a playfulness to it. This idea, like, yeah, we're all like dancing around lifetime to lifetime, playing these different roles, and that's not morose. That's there's a playfulness and a beauty to that. Even the idea that the most difficult things we face in life, just the notion that you chose that and you want to do that, and maybe the person, even some of your quote unquote enemies, they're playing roles with you. You might have
Right.
been, you guys are like the tightest of tight. And it's just like, no, I'll take on that identity for 80 years, 100 years, just so you can learn. And Ram Dass had a great story, I'll say briefly, about, you've probably heard it, about his mom. And that one of the things the Maharaji told him is that he says, your mother is a great soul, like very
Mm.
profound soul. And he immediately is like, my mother, my New Hampshire mother, we thought as beneath him, and she's just very simple, so forth and so on. And then it really made him think, what if my mother, almost like her incarnation, is largely about allowing me to be who I am,
Right.
maybe in reaction to her in a sense. And the unbelievable love and grace from that action is profound. And it really makes you think about all the relationships you have with everyone you come in contact in your life, and the complexity of that dance that we're doing, and the choices and the gifts we're giving one another so that we can do what we need to do.
Right. Yeah, I think that can be an incredible source of freedom. Instead of, I was actually reading an article in the New York Times yesterday or the day before about holding grudges and how really unhelpful it is in your life. And I think seeing this is seeing every person in our lives in terms of like, oh, they're just playing a role. And not in oh, this is part of my story. It's like it's the opposite of ego, you know? I mean, when I say it in that way, it can sound like, oh, this is my story and everybody's a player in it. Yeah, this idea that we're just working with one another to work out different energies, right? To work out different storylines. And when you become open to that, you open up.
Yeah, and that every dance being done is important.
Right.
Whether and they're not better or worse or bigger or smaller. And I was talking about this yesterday with someone, just sort of like the idea that, you know, tending your garden, or like if some things that are unseen, if it's part of your path and there's that love in it, it's just as important as the things that are highly seen and maybe by millions of people.
Right.
And we're in a world of quantifying everything, of course, with likes and data. And it's hard for us to value that which is silent and
Right.
that which isn't so public. But my heart tells me it's just as important. It really does. You know, it doesn't make logical sense, but I feel like it makes heart sense in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when you were doing the Perfect song, that was different because I didn't give you anything. And you came back with some great stuff. You know, my favorite thing in that is it's got this like, yeah, da, 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 yeah. And it reminds me of Sheryl Crow. I don't know why. Like it's like this late 90s little Sheryl Crow riff that I love. It has this kind of summertime vibe.
Yeah.
What was it like for you getting into that one?
I wanted it to feel easy. And I think I came at that one, just the idea of perfect. That's it. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And I, of course, came immediately. I mean, Ram Dass's, I would probably culturally most well-known thing is Be Her Now, the book. And then, of course, I named my record after that. And I just was thinking just this repetition of perfect. And it's, to me, it was calling me. He was calling me to be present at every moment and to say, no matter, okay, now is perfect. Okay, now is perfect. Okay, now is perfect. And I feel like so often we struggle with other people not being perfect, or ourselves not being perfect, or this moment or this condition not being perfect,
or whatever perfect is, right?
Right,
you know,
exactly.
Or this idea like, what is perfection anyway?
Right,
everything's changing and moving continuously, and
right. And so when I thought about it, I thought, oh, the way that I can make sense of this as a meditation is to say, now is perfect, and now is perfect, and now you are perfect, and now I am perfect, and you know, perfection isn't a quality to me. It's a capacity, right? It's a capacity to hold the shadow and the light and the difficult and the easy. You know, it's like the capacity to hold all of that is true perfection.
I should point out for listeners that when they hear this, most likely Perfect isn't out, and when it is out, they might be like, where's Laura? And it's looking like there will be two versions of the song, and the version with you singing on it will become sort of as a bonus thing in the fall. So I'll have to stay tuned for that. But you know, that song has an interesting evolution. If anyone is interested in knowing, basically that song has kora on it, the African harp. And I actually tried to make an album with kora like 2 years ago with some kora players, and we would start like the process of working together, and it just never was happening. But I was really I had a vision of doing a record originally with piano and kora. Never happened. And then this project came into form, and I still was like, it'd be cool to get some kora in there somewhere as sort of just diversity of instrumentation. And I met this kora player, or I think it was Rada, my girlfriend, saw a kora player in the Portland airport. Okay. And it's like, I'd been through several kora players. And she's like, well, he's pretty good. And here's his little card. She took a picture of it. So I checked out his website, and it's like, he seems legit. You know, he's like a white guy. He looks like a lacrosse player, but he's really good. And so I reached out and I'm like, listen, I'm doing this thing, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to be in Portland recording some people. You want to try it? Just give it a shot. And he's like, yeah, sure. And I show up. I sent him the stuff. I show up. We did it in like the basement of a house he was like staying at. And it was the summertime. And literally he's like a good looking, tall, blonde, like lacrosse player, young. Yeah, like the last guy you would think dedicated a lot of his life to like learning Cora and learning it from like Cora masters. So he's just a strange, his name's Will Dudley. Really great player. And we recorded it. We did a couple tracks, actually recorded some guitar, some African guitar. We did some different things. And I put it into that song. And then that song used to be the song that is now called We Are Truth. Like it had that sample in it. Mm. And the song was rejected by, let's just say it was rejected. And I was not happy about this because I really like the music. And I also really like the words that are now in We Are Truth. And so that was that. And eventually I was not going to give up on those words. So I wrote different music to that. And that worked out for We Are Truth. But I had this orphan song and I kind of just forgot about it. And then the perfect thing was it's the only one that's like not a, shall we say, traditional teaching from Ram Dass. It's just two words. It's not, I don't think Ram Dass thought of it as a teaching. It was actually, we finished. And the mic was still on in front of him. And I said something like, Ram Dass, what you're giving me is perfect. Like it's poetry. It's just absolutely perfect. And he is just laughing and saying, perfect, and laughing. And I just thought that was a really cute energy in his laugh and what he was saying. And I thought maybe we could make a whole song with just that. And so I tossed it on and we had that. And then later on, I thought this is a pretty spacious song. Maybe there could be singing. And I thought it should be a female voice. And that's how it got to you.
Wow. I love the journey, that whole journey, that perfect, which is also funny that it
was last minute. Yeah, it was the last one. It was kind of an afterthought, actually. It was like, oh, wait, this actually, I forgot about that track. I really like the Cora. I think it balances out the record. Let's bring it back and see what happens.
I also love the fact that it really felt, that whole process feels really imbued with Ram Dass laughing over top of it. Like all the trouble that you went through to make that happen.
Yeah, and that's a big part of his energy too, is that playfulness and that laughter. And we talk about such serious things on the record, but that's a big part of his personality and identity. So I like representing that on the record as well.
I've been thinking a lot about that recently, and in spending time with my friend, my dear best childhood friend, Guru Jagat. I noticed one of the last times we spent time together, that how much laughter she has always, and things will get wild and things are crazy. And she's talking about things that are really difficult. And she finds this place and laughs about it. And you notice that about any spiritually enlightened person, that there's a capacity to laugh. The Dalai Lama, Pema Chodron, who I follow deeply, Thich Nhat Hanh, like any of these people, the truth and the kind of like real transcendent joy is the ability to find the space to laugh about things. And so as a result of that, my recent mantra has become 5% more joy. 5% more joy. Like no matter what.
That's doable. We can do that in the moment.
Yeah, just like 5%. So even this morning, as we were struggling with technology and power outages and who else knows what was parking tickets and dogs, all these things that are happening. It's just like, what can you do but laugh?
Yeah. And so, it's fun. It's fun that we got that onto the record. And I'm glad for you that song's process artistically for you is, a little more flowing and easy. And I guess, we'd already done the other one too. Maybe you had that sense of that worked and it gave you a little confidence to just try stuff. And other artists had Trevor Hall, mentioned to me that he also was kind of hyper conscious about what he was doing, and that was sort of challenging. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because he cares so much, and I understand that. Yeah. Well, cool. I'm looking forward to getting that out soon, and this will probably come out after your song, Soul Land comes out, because I think then people can listen to the song itself. But tell me a little bit just about what you've got coming up for you with music, or if you feel more energized now, and where you're sort of pointing the ship.
Oh, I'm so energized right now. I'm really excited. I am actually performing this summer at the very first ever yoga and wellness festival in Bosnia.
Bosnia. Wow.
Yeah. A good friend of mine here in LA, DJ Valida, she is a DJ for KCRW. She and her mother are putting together this festival. And I've been asked to go and perform Mynabirds songs, but also I'm going to be doing some sound bath meditation music and some workshops, year naming workshop, and doing some tarot reading. And so I feel like us working together opened that door in a strange way. Even though I've known Valida for a while, her asking me to do that was, I don't know, there was something almost, I felt like what we were doing was like affecting maybe the way I was treating my own music or talking about my own music, and the way that people were perceiving me making music. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go do a little mini Mynabirds tour this fall. I'm going to put out a single. Actually, there's something I need to talk to you about. I got an email last week from a DJ. He's a German DJ. Well, he's Danish, but he's Finnish, but he lives in Berlin. Anyway, we co-wrote a song on Be Here Now. And he reached out to me and asked if he could do a remix of the song Be Here Now. And I thought, well, that's some interesting timing, considering what you and I are working on. And so he's going to do a remix of the song that I'd like to put out at the same time as the final piece of your record comes out.
August 9th.
Yeah, exactly. So, and so I'm going to do that. And I don't know, I was going to, maybe you might want to look into it and see about doing maybe a remix. I don't know.
Yeah. What's his name?
His name is
DJ name?
Perttu, Perttu.
Perttu. Okay.
Yeah. And I wanted to connect you two anyway, because I feel like you two have different audiences. And I think maybe there's some collaboration there that could help you both sort of expand into new worlds. And it's always good to meet somebody new. So
yeah, of course. And I'd be happy to take a look. And we're also, looking for a remix here and there.
Yeah.
We sent, my partner is really good friends with Diplo, in the sense of like went to college, best friends, that kind of friends, but maybe not like, someone from a long time ago, but they still talk and are friendly. And I was like, you got to send him some Ramdas stuff. It's like, I'm actually not familiar much with Diplo's music at all. I just know he's sort of a cultural force in the DJ world. And so we sent him that home track a couple days ago, actually. And he's like, sounds really interesting. And I'm like, well, check it out, because we're just trying to reach the kids, and they bring, that'd be really crazy. It's like Maharaji getting into the clubs.
Right.
But, again, I trust that these things will pan out just as they need to, or not just as they need to.
Well,
we're always looking for remixers.
Yeah. I mean, I really see a space for this. I think, you see at Coachella, the dance tent is becoming the most popular space that people flock to. But at the same time, there is, what was it? There was like the overnight sound bath that Diplo was a part of, and I feel like there's a space where you have all of this high energy dance, and it's like party drugs that are like more energy uppers. You know what I mean? It's like this, like we have, the technology is pushing us along, and we have a lot to do, and we have to move fast, and blah, 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 blah. It's high energy. And I think as a result of that, people are now looking for something that's like, oh, we actually want some spiritual refreshment. We need something that is centering. We want the alternative to that. So,
yeah, I feel like that's sort of symptomatic of everything going on energetically in the world. Maybe that's why there's more and more of a hunger for these centering modalities in music, because it's needed. So it's like the yin to the yang of the everything's speeding up and more information coming at us, not to mention the collapse and transformation happening. Yeah. I read about the secular church thing a couple times. Do you know that woman? I think it was Genevieve.
No, but I want to reach out to her. So
yeah.
I'm
definitely simpatico thinking there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, cool. I just wanted to like connect with you and hear a little bit. I've been talking to different people who have collaborated on the record, just about the creative process a little bit, get a little background. It's sort of a casual behind the song type thing.
Yeah.
And that was interesting. I actually didn't know your process, at least with Soulland, and that there even was one. My vision of it is like, all I know is I sent you that and you sent it back, and I was like, this is great. So, and I just started playing around with it and mixing it in. And I'm actually waiting for the master of that, like right now. So I'm very eager to be wrapping that up.
Great. I can't wait to hear it. I'm really, I really was excited about being asked to be a part of it. But again, like I said, it required a certain transformation that I had to go through in order to do it justice. And I was really grateful. I was most grateful for that.
Sounds like it was all sort of this divine weaving. So let's have it just continue.
Yeah.
So where can people find what you're up to?
Well, people can follow me on Instagram at Laura Bird, and the Mynabirds.com is where tour dates will be posted. I'm looking forward to getting a new song out, doing some touring this fall, and then putting out another record next year. I'm excited. My music has always kind of been at the crossroads, the intersection of politics and spirituality, and just sort of spreading a little love and acceptance, among friends and support there. So I'm excited in thinking about what I might want to say and do, and sort of use the power of music to do next year in a year that's going to be probably pretty culturally fraught.
Yeah, it's going to be dynamic. I know. It just keeps getting crazier and crazier.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Thanks, for giving me your time and sticking through the power outages and whatever else we have going on.
We did it.
We did it. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
To identify with your individual soul in the plane of consciousness, which I call Soulland.
Okay. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Miss Bird, for joining in. And thank you, Laura, for gracing us with your vocals on this record. This track you're hearing in the background is the said track, Soulland, featuring Laura Bird of the Mynabirds. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Just give it a review. Give it 5 stars. Only 5 stars. Why wouldn't you give it 5 stars? It's a free podcast. I love doing this. It does take a few hours a week, 4, 5, 6 hours a week, and I do it because it feels enjoyable to me, to be honest. I like talking to people, and I like having different ways to interact with you guys, and just not just through the music. Like, we're all swimming around the same painting and artwork of the mystery. This is just another way. It's another story. So thank you for sharing it, and thank you for writing reviews, and for helping propel the energy of this podcast by listening, of course, but also spreading it. And if there's things you like, let people know. Tell them on social media, or just whisper it in their ear. Check out eastforest.org for all the touring dates. There have been some new things added. Vermont's happening in the fall, as well as the Science and Non-Duality Conference, Cape Cod Yoga Festival, and the East Forest Retreat, and there will be more. There's some touring coming up. I always do my best to stay out there on the road and keep things active. But August 9th, Ram Dass, that's what the record's called, Ram Dass, is hitting the streets digitally. There will be vinyl, there will be CD. Soon we'll have links to that. There's only 500 pressings of the vinyl. It's a beautiful double vinyl with all the lyrics inside, a big Maharaji painting on the back by Elizabeth Hilton, in addition to the Ram Dass painting on the front, also by Elizabeth Hilton. graphic design by D.F. Birch. It's great. Can't wait. Talk to you soon. You keep walking your walk. Don't take any shit. But if you do it with grace.
You meet other souls. You meet your pod, soul pod, that have been with you infinitely. Soul land, soul land, soul land. Contains God.